Cheers, queers! Welcome back to another episode of Big Gay Book Club. I'll be your host, Theora, and today we will be discussing the Thai girl love novel, The Earth, Vows of the Land, by Salmon. This is my first book I've ever read by this particular author, and this author is well known for writing a ton of books, but this was the first one I ever read, so I'm very excited to get into this. If you're a fan of the series, I will mainly be discussing the book, not necessarily the series. Caitlin will be joining me for a episode where we talk specifically about The Earth, the series, and what we loved about it. But today, we're just going to be focusing on the book, primarily what I liked about it. I'll do a little bit of comparison to the series, but mostly we're going to focus on Salmon's book. If you want more Earth content, Caitlin and I did react to the series, so you can find select episodes on YouTube and the entirety of the series for The Earth and all of the Four Element content on our Patreon. So for $5 a month, you can get more access to even more of this content. There's no ads, it's full-length content, all that fun stuff. If you don't have $5 to spend, that's totally fine. Join our Discord. We have a dedicated channel to the Four Elements where everybody talks about the Four Elements. So go over there, make some friends, talk about the book, talk about the series, have a gay old time just like we do. It's very, very fun. All right. And so with that, let's get into the novel. So if you're new here and you've never been to one of our book clubs before, I like to first start with how I read the novel, just in case you're interested in also reading Thai girl love novels that have been translated into your language of choice or in the native Thai. If you're a native Thai speaker, also hi, welcome. So I read it through I think it's Meb or Meeb, I never know how to say it. It's MEB. That's the app I primarily use for reading novels. Shout out to our Discord, that's where I found it. From my understanding, that's where the authors get the most royalties from the electronic books that you purchase. So I primarily read through there. It works very similar to Kindle in the sense that you can highlight and bookmark, and has a lot of the functions that if you read a lot of ebooks are really helpful. So it's helpful for me when doing these. I just do my highlights, do my notes, and then go back. That's how I put these episodes together. So good app. There's a lot of stuff on there. I got actually I got all the Four Elements, spoiler, as a discount because I guess when the series came out, they discounted the novels. So you might find good deals on there too for purchasing them. And some can be less than $10 American dollars and pretty affordable. So great app. Highly recommend it for your Thai girl love reading novel adventures. Why did I read this novel? Honestly, so I started watching the series first. I was planning on reading the Four Elements at some point, not necessarily this soon. But then I watched the show and immediately fell in love with the Chaos Cousins specifically, whom I will talk a lot about in this episode because they're just so great. And so I was just eager to get to know them better since they are the primary focus of the entire series. They are the Four Elements. And I really love Din. I just resonate a lot with Din. She's a huge dork and I just love her. And so I was just okay, I want to know what's happening. So that's why I read it. And my overall impression of the novel, very positive, honestly. Like I said, I'm really, really enamored with the author. I think she did a phenomenal job of setting this whole thing up, creating this giant mega series of novels that are now an amazing television series. Can't wait for the rest of it. She does a great job with characterizing her characters. They all feel very real. It was a lot funnier than I thought it was going to be. The Chaos Cousins are hilarious, and their just sibling dynamic is so fun and cute, and I just really loved how it was written. The translation itself, so I read the English translation because I sadly do not speak Thai or can read it. So I did read the English translation. The translation itself was phenomenal, so thank you to the translator. And the thing I love most about the novel when comparing it to the series, as what I love with any novels, is that in this one, we got a lot of inner monologues. So the thoughts of mainly Rose and Din. Sometimes you get the cousins and it's really funny when you get their thoughts. But I thought it really enhanced the story to know what the characters are actually thinking in those scenarios that you see on screen. And sometimes it makes the scene funnier, sweeter. It just adds a lot to it. So I enjoyed that a lot when I was reading the novel. And that's probably one of my favorite things about books in general that doesn't always it's hard to translate to a television series, because in a television series, you're not in their heads. You don't get access to their mind unless the character explicitly says what they're thinking, and or they do a phenomenal job of like emoting, like giving you the emotions. But even that's not always a one-to-one translation. So if you haven't read the novel, I highly recommend that you do. It did add to the experience. But overall, the series so far is really, really great. And why do I say so far? So, little disclaimer. So, at this stage, when I'm filming this, I have seen the first 6 episodes of The Earth, the series. So, 7 and 8 have not aired at this stage. So, that will impact the way I can compare it. So, I won't, for that reason, will not be doing a ton of comparison. I might do more of that when Caitlin and I get together and talk about why we love the series after the series completed. And so, going forward, this will primarily be a discussion about the novel, what I loved about it, and I'll kind of go through some general things about it too. Focusing on what's different so far in the series, but again, primarily going to be about the novel. So if you haven't read the novel, this will spoil things. It might, although I feel like the series is doing a phenomenal job of paying homage to Salmon's work, and it does follow it pretty closely. Some scenes are altered because that's what happens when you adapt things. Some scenes with the cousins, for example, are altered and honestly were just even more funny in the show than they were in the series. The novel. Not that the novel's not funny. The novel is funny, but they did enhance and change certain things, and honestly nothing is bad. It's just it all feels like the same story. So if you haven't read the novel, this honestly wouldn't spoil much unless they decide to really deviate from some key plot lines in the show, which I really don't see them doing. So, little disclaimer, but enter at your own risk. And if you haven't read it and want to read it and then come back. All right, so with that, the storyline or the timeline of events in the novel seems pretty similar to the series, like I just said. So, a brief overview of what happens main event wise. So, Rose and Din, our main characters, are reunited after 14 years amidst Rose's father, Tipacorn's coma and some deadly farm politics, which is not a sentence I ever thought I'd say, but here we are. Then Rose and Din decide to get fake married in order to protect themselves, mostly Rose, and expose human trafficking. Another sentence I never thought I'd say. Throughout the course of this, Rose and Din realize they like each other for real and then date for real in the middle of their marriage, which is amazing. And then Din's bestie slash assistant, Kaew, betrays Din and Rose because, surprise, Kaew loved Din all along in the most one-sided way possible. And in the end, the ultimate villain, Wasu, almost kills Din, but Kaew redeems herself, sticking that man behind bars, and then Rose and Din live happily ever after, really. And that's the gist of what we're going. So in the series, we're up to the point where we're going to get the Kaew reveal. I'm pretty confident. But unless they really decide, listen, the way the series has been going, I was watching, I'm like, they're not really lingering on her, but like they started to in episode 6. I'm like, I'm pretty sure we're gonna get the betrayal very soon because there's the camera's starting to linger on Kaew looking upset. I'm like, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Okay, so with that, I'm just going to go through things I love about the series kind of in the beginning, and then we'll do a deep dive into Rose and Din. So let's start first with one of my favorite things about the story, which is that Rose was never the damsel in distress. She could have been very easily. She's like the younger, kind of naive girl who comes back to Thailand after being away for so long. She doesn't know the farm politics. She doesn't really know the people that live there as intimately as she used to. She's back in this new environment and pretty lost and almost helpless in a way because her father's in a coma. She can't really trust anybody. But she was never actually the damsel in distress. Rose was characterized as this intelligent and independent person, and I really love that. So from the moment she arrives back in Thailand, she's always questioning everyone and everything, like an intelligence person should. In fact, there's one piece where she's talking to Modang, and she says, I need to follow up on my father's case to find out if this was really an accident or if someone planned it. So Rose was like self-aware and she was at a disadvantage kind of coming back into this super chaotic situation, and that she didn't have a lot of allies. She had Modang for sure, and Modang's great. Modang's like the intelligence officer on Rose's team. That bitch knows everything, even before they know it. And so that's a helpful confidant for Rose to have. But other than that, she doesn't have anybody who's in power, right? She kind of has Din hanging around her, but like Din is different. She doesn't know if she could trust Din. But Rose knows that the only way out of this is if she helps herself. So there's one part where, early on, I think in chapter 1, where Wasu is harassing her, and Rose thinks to herself she has no choice but to find a way through this uncomfortable situation on her own, without expecting anyone to step in and help, especially while her father had yet to regain consciousness. So Rose, again, was never a damsel. Rose was very aware that she had to be enough to get herself out of these situations, that there really wasn't anyone she could fully rely on, so she had to rely on herself. And similarly, Rose, who's like the youngest in like the main cast of characters, not with the cousins, they're kind of like ancillary, but like in the farm drama plot line, Rose is the youngest, right? And so culturally speaking, Rose should defer to her elders because that's proper, including Din Wasu. They're both older than her. But Rose was not blindly trusting of any of her elders, okay? Because she grew up in America. She thinks differently. She took Wasu and Din's accounts of what was going on the farm with a grain of salt, okay? And came to her own conclusions. In fact, she even went so far as to test Wasu and Din to gauge who was more trustworthy and came to the correct conclusion that it was Din. And to me, this characterization, which the author very like painstakingly put in there, made Rose an equal to Din in my mind, and vice versa, because they were both independently strong and intelligent women who saw eye to eye on a lot of things, and that's what ultimately connects them. And my favorite part of all this, with Rose not being the damsel in distress, is that Din was also aware the whole time that Rose was not this helpless, weak person that some people, Wasu and his father, saw her as. So the first time that Din explains what's going on with the farm and her dad's case to Rose, like Din is like super vague about it. She's like, bad stuff happened. And like, somebody, I'm not naming names, was doing some really awful stuff. And maybe that played into why your father was left bleeding on the side of the road. Okay, Rose, I'm not going to say anything more. And after she explains this in a super vague way to Rose, Din thinks to herself, although Kasama didn't point fingers at anyone, she was certain that Rose was smart enough to piece things together. So that little inner piece of Din's thought really shows that Din thought really highly of Rose's intelligence. They've been separated for a really long time. She got updates about Rose through her father, but like you can see that Din, in her mind, respects Rose as her own person and really is like, I can't be accusatory because I don't have enough evidence. If I say this, like vague, she's like, Rose is smart. She'll figure out what I mean. So that shows that like Din respects Rose and always has, and does not see Rose as this damsel in distress that she needs to save all the time, although she does because she wants to. And she doesn't see Rose as this like helpless person that can be taken advantage of the way that Wasu does. And speaking of Din, one thing I really love in the story is Din's transformation from childhood Din to adult Din. So when Din was a child, she's described as this small, gangly, and weak little girl. And the key to that is that she's not somebody physically or like verbally is able to protect the people she loved. Okay. And this is harped on throughout the novel, and that's why when they cast in the series, they cast this like gangly little girl. They did a great job with casting. This is not a negative thing to the girl, but they had to make her look like she was somebody who could get pushed around, because like that was harped on a lot in Din's childhood, and it like shapes Din as an adult. So it's an important detail to get right. And even when she's an adult, there's still parts of that not helplessness. Yeah, I guess it's helplessness in a way. Din's helplessness to be able to be the one that protects people. It still lingers when she's an adult. So in chapter 1, after Tipacorn makes her promise to take care of Rose, Din thinks to herself, how could he, Tipacorn, entrust the most important thing in his life to someone who had never been able to protect anything precious in her own life? Uncle Teep, don't you think you're trusting the wrong person? This inner monologue from Din is really revealing as to how Din sees herself. which is she's still that helpless little girl in her brain, which is really the opposite of the way the people who are closest to her in her life see her. Which is why Uncle Teep entrusted Rose to Din in the very first place, because he saw how capable she was and he was present and a big part of Din's transformation into that very capable human being, since he kind of served as her surrogate dad after her father unfortunately passed away. After 14 years of separation, Rose, when she gets back into Din's life, immediately notices how capable Din is as a person when it comes to protecting and fighting back. So again, even someone who's like not in Din's orbit to see the transformation, but like knew her then and sees her now, can immediately see that that Din changed. And even though Din doesn't necessarily recognize that fully about herself, or there's that lingering insecurity within her, especially when it comes to Rose, because Rose was the reason she wanted to be somebody capable of protecting somebody else. It was like it all came back to Rose. And so the fact that it's Rose now as an adult, she's like, oh crap, can I do this? Oh my God. Like it's that like insecurity that sparked the whole thing to begin with. So then 14 years later, like Din ends up becoming Rose's safe space at the end of this because Din went through this very purposeful transformation with the mission to protect Rose, and Din completes her mission, which you got to give it to Din, okay? She's a determined human being, and when she sets her mind to something, she can definitely do it, even if she doesn't fully believe in herself. Speaking of Din, Din is one of the reasons I love the Earth so much because I just love everything about her. Like, she's my spirit animal, okay? If like human beings could be other human beings' spirit animal, it's Din because Din is just the best. And one of my favorite descriptions of Din and where I relate to her is that she was described by Modang as, quote, she keeps to herself and avoids unnecessarily human interactions. And it's like, yeah, girl, I get that. Like, Din is like, listen, I'm not a people person. I'm just gonna kind of deal with you when I got to. But like, she prefers her solitude, her farm, hard days of work, keeping things running, honoring her parents. She's great. And it's really clear when you watch Din, get to know Din, hear her farm workers talk about her, that Din works incredibly hard to run Sunrock Farm. Like so hard. She basically dedicated decades of her life to that farm. But the downside of that, especially in the absence of her father, is that she, quote, barely has time for anything else, according to Modang. And it really makes me wonder with Din how this socially avoidant recluse takes care of herself, honestly, because we get gaps in time with Din, but how does she really take care of herself? She's really adamant about Rose eating 3 meals a day. She's really adamant about Rose having the best life, about she's really adamant about the people she cares about being taken care of, but like how much care does Din put into herself? She puts a lot of work into the farm, and I think the farm is like her dad's legacy, not necessarily Din doing it for herself. So it does make me wonder, like, does Din neglect things, like wants and needs that she has because she'd rather put her time and energy into the other people in her life, or the farm, which is her father in a way. And so I do wonder that about Din. It's not really harped on in the novel or really touched on a little. It's There's some little things mentioned, but I do wonder that about Din. If you have any thoughts about like what was Din's personal life really like, did at all, like did Din have hobbies outside? Like I just wonder like what was she doing when she had spare time? Because she had to have had moments where she had some. Did she seek out her cousins? Like based on the conversations in the very beginning, it seems like Din is not the one that seeks them out. They seek Din out because when this whole thing starts with Lom, she's like, "Why are you calling me, Din? You never call me." So I do wonder that about Din. Like, what really was did her life look like outside of work, really, if anything? Like, it must have been really just sad and lonely for Din. So my heart kind of breaks for her a little bit. And I'm glad even though human trafficking is involved, I'm glad that she ultimately gets her person, and her family seems a lot closer, or at least they're bothering her more because some of them really love Rose. And so, anyway, there's that. Okay. Other thing I really love about the novel is Modang. gotta have a great sidekick. It's not a series or not a novel without a great sidekick. And you don't get better than Modang, to be honest with you. And my absolute favorite thing about Modang is she's also a self-aware person. She is the number one Din Rose shipper. And at one point, she insists to Rose that Rose call her that. And Rose is one of my favorite moments in this novel. Is Rose has her own inner monologue about this. She's like, Modang asked me to call her the number one Din Rose shipper. She insists I call her this. And she's like, I don't even know what the fuck that means. I like died laughing reading that because it was just like such a Modang thing to do. She has such like so much confidence, and I love that about her. And she's unabashedly herself at all times. And she's another one who like truly cares about Rose, who like, yes, there's a power imbalance between them, but like there's a friendship between them. And she's like Din, where or actually she's probably more like Bi, honestly, where she's like very protective of like the people she cares about and is willing to do crazy things to protect them, which I'll get to at some point in this book club. But I do love her personality. And she was a good element of like comedy coming in Rose's circle, because like a lot of the comedy comes from the chaos of Din's family, but also like Modang is another chaotic element of the story who is in Rose's orbit, and so when everything collides, it's just glorious. Other thing I love about Modang is she's peak chaotic bisexual. Love that about her. Her first response to Rose when Rose was like, "Tell me about Wasu and Din," her first thing is she's like, they're both really hot. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you got eyes, right? Like, girl, she's just so thirsty all the fucking time. And it's not limited to those two. Like, it gets funnier. Okay. And it gets so obnoxious to Rose, like Modang's unabashed, unashamed thirst, that at one point she flat out asks Modang, do you want to marry Din? Because the way you're talking about her, like, what the fuck? I'm sorry, it's so funny. And then, okay, again, like I said, it's not limited to Din. So at one point, at several points throughout the novel, there's flirting that happens, or like crushing between Modang and Lam, which is really fucking funny. And at one point, Rose thinks she says this in her thought how tired she is of hearing Modang talk about Lam's smile, which is so funny. Which means Modang won't shut up about Lam smiling at her, which is so funny. Because Lam will flirt with anybody, including trees. And then Modang is also a giant flirt. So there's those two together are so much chaotic, flirtatious, gay energy. It's hilarious. And then as an amazing sidekick, probably her best plot line was being Rose's love guru, and just all okay, this is one of those things where the novel really shines, I would say more so than the series in a way, because like the dating advice she gives Rose, there's a lot more of it in the novel, and it's a lot more explicit, and it's fucking hilarious, their conversation, because poor Rose is very earnestly like, I don't know what I'm doing, and the Modang's like, I so got you, and then you find out she's never dated anybody in her life, and then like it's the blind leading the blind, and it's just so hysterical, their like little drama where she's trying to lead Rose through this relationship, and then Rose is holding back the fact that it's not real, even though Monique's like, you're married, why are you freaking out about this? And she's like, well, it's not real. But anyway, those scenes were so funny in the novel. I absolutely love them. And then icing on the cake, peak chaotic bisexualness of Modang is at the end. This hasn't happened in the series yet by the time you get this, but the scene where she tricks Wasu into kidnapping her instead of Rose, and then he figures the sequence is so funny in the novel, the way it's revealed. But then he finds out she's not Rose, and is like, ew, what the fuck? And then she tries to hit on him anyway, and it's so ridiculous and just peak Modang. Even in like this life or death crazy situation, she's still herself, and that's something I absolutely love about her. She was just an amazing element of chaos, and I just loved her so much. And as a person, like I said, she's also fiercely protective of Rose, the person that, she cares about the most in this whole like situation. And I love that she was such a good ride or die for Rose. But as with a lot of Tiger Love series, like I don't love the power imbalance here. This is kind of like if you've watched or read The Loyal Pin, this is like an Nin and Prick situation where you have a clear friendship happening, but one person is the boss, the other person's the employee. So Modang's backstory, which isn't in the series, is that she was the daughter of Uncle Teep's housekeeper. So, and that, while sweet, it's like, oh, they're a member of the family, but are they? They're the servants. So it kind of gives like caste system vibes, like she's born into servitude, which I don't love. But it seems very common in Thai girl love dramas to kind of have these like lifelong friend servants to like the rich girls. Other thing that I think helps kind of like the loyal pin, which was that Rose and Modang were of similar ages. And so kind of made sense for them to bond in this fashion, but we still have the employer situation going on that kind of gives me a pause a little bit. But not to say that they don't care about each other and things like that. It's just like that's there. Okay. Other shining moment of Modang that I absolutely fucking love, and I feel robbed of in the novel. I don't know what the series is gonna do. Is that when Rose's father comes out of the coma, and Rose and Din are kind of on a little estranged from each other a little bit. He asks Modang to fill him in on what happened. He's like, "What's going on with Rose and Din? What's going on with everything?" And I can only imagine what she told him because we don't get it, okay, about Din and Rose's relationship. But when she's done, Uncle Teep says, and she's like, "Oh, do you want me to tell you more about that?" And he says, "You've already told me more than enough, Modang." So I don't even know what she told him, like how explicit she went into like, and then I was giving her sex advice. Like, who knows what she was saying to this man? But I just imagine it being this unhinged, one-sided conversation where poor Uncle Teep's like, "Oh, I feel my heart going out. I could think I'm in the hospital." But anyway, I would love those scenes if someone would like to write them because it sounds amazing. Okay, speaking of chaos, this wouldn't be complete without the Chaos Cousins, which are one of my favorite things of the book, and just makes me so excited for the rest of the stories because they're ridiculous, okay? And I love them all. And this is what a cute connecting theme for a bunch of books, which is this whole family thing going on. So, who are the Chaos Cousins? They're the offspring of the Wathinwanit brothers. So we have four brothers that then have four daughters, and the daughters are the four elements. And so the oldest is Kasama, aka Din, who is the earth. So Din means earth. And she's the steady, grounded person, which makes sense to have the earth be the eldest because those are traits normally associated with eldest cousin. But interestingly, Kasama is an only child, but she has these cousins that are essentially function like siblings, which is interesting. I don't know about the other ones. I will be reading the rest of the Elements stories to find out, but I'm assuming they have a similar situation going on. Otherwise, there'd be more elements in the cousins. But anyway, I have the most information about Din because this is Din's story. Obviously, it's the Earth. So she was nicknamed Earth by her parents to empower her because remember, when she was a child, she was, quote, weak. And her parents wanted her to be strong, like the Earth. And also, her father thought Din was very strong hearted, like Mother Earth. So they gave her the nickname Earth, a very big, strong nickname to a weak little girl, who grew up to not be that. And then I was looking into her, like her given name or whatever, Kasama, and I couldn't, as far as I could tell, it wasn't a Thai word unless I did Google wrong. But I did find in Tagalog, which is a the Filipino language, that it is a word in that language, and it means together or partner is another translation. So Din mates for life is what I'm hearing is from this, and that tracks based on Din's entire story. Rose was her first love. Rose was her only sexual partner. Like, yeah, That's Din for you. So tracks. I love that the naming also shaped the character. I always find that really fun when authors are that deep with the character. So again, this author is my jam, where she like really thinks about her characters, the characterization, how they're going to grow and interact, and I'm here for this author, honestly. Okay, second cousins. This is going to be in order of age. So Din's the eldest. Second eldest is Apo, aka Nam, or water, and she's described as the calm and intelligent one. So she's the genius of the family. She functions as a hotel heiress and a workaholic that's too busy for people. So when it comes to love, there's actually one scene at Din and Rose's like second wedding where the other cousins are like, "What does Nam think about love?" I think it was Lam. Maybe it was Lam thinking about it. This would make sense. And they're talking about love for some reason. And she's like, I wonder what does Nam even think about love? Like, do you even think about love? And Nam's like, yeah, sure, Nam. I was just thinking about it. And they're like, okay, what were you thinking? And Nam's like, well, I was thinking about how it's going to be Valentine's Day soon and I can have a Valentine's Day special to get people into my hotels. And then she keeps rambling and then Lam tunes her out. And she's like, that's what she thinks about love? That's fucking weird. Like, so I love it because A, it's funny, and B, the author does a great job of like setting up Nam and like giving hints what the next book is going to be about. So that the scene at the wedding at the very very end is like a good like, hey, this is what's in store for you, reader, next volume, which was such clever marketing, to be honest with you. Like, hats off to you, ma'am. That was fucking brilliant. I love it. So I literally can't wait for the water because to me, Nam at this stage of in my journey is the most mysterious, which makes sense because she's seems like the most introverted. And then the fact that she's like so blinded, oblivious to everything around her, except like she's singularly focused on work and is oblivious to anything. So the fact that another human being has to get through to her enough to be like, pay attention to me as a human, not as a business thing. I can't wait for that journey. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait. Okay, and then fan favorite and third cousin is Wyo, aka Lam, or the air. So, like the air, anyway the wind blows, she's playful and easygoing, which nailed it. She's a police officer and not just a police officer. She's like the daughter of like the police officer, which she doesn't like to brag about or use to her advantage because Lam seems like somebody who like likes to earn her own stuff and is not relying on nepotism. So good, strong character traits from Lam, from we know about her now. When it comes to romance, she says she's open to love but hasn't found the right person, but she will. And she's a huge flirt. She's flirting with Modang. Like, she's just ridiculous. And she's very blunt, where she's just like, I see a beautiful woman, I call her beautiful. I don't know what you want from me, Din. Din, who can't string two words together in a cohesive sentence without fucking something up. So I love that. And then my favorite actually might be the youngest. Actually, no, Din is my favorite. My other favorite might be Achima, aka Fi, or the Fire. She's just the way she just crashes situations with her personality, it will never get old to me. So she's the bold and intense one, as described by her other cousins. Okay, these descriptions came from the other cousins that I'm using, not from me. And then job wise, I think she's a photographer. I don't know exactly what she does. Again, I will get into the novels. Don't spoil it. I don't know exactly what she does because at one point they're like, Fi's gonna have to go back to the mine soon. I'm like, what the fuck, the mine? What does she even do? Like, does she have multiple jobs? Like, what is she doing? She just seems like a thrill seeker, and I'm very excited to get into her. But then something one of the cousins said about her that I thought was kind of revealing about her personality was they said that Fi enjoys taking photos but hates being in front of the camera. So she seems like she's somebody who like, despite being a bold and intense person, doesn't like being the center of attention the way like Lam does. So that's really interesting. Kind of like a contrasting character traits to me in my head. So I'm also very curious to see her story. And she also is like not opposed to love, but is opposed to love for herself. She's like, that seems like a bunch of nonsense. And it could be that she's the youngest and is like, I never really and is just like not there yet with her life. And she's like, I'm just gonna be free and do what I want, which is valid. But she seems like the most resistant to love. Nam's oblivious. Lam is like, I keep flirting and it doesn't work. I'll just keep trying. And then Din is like, I've been in love with this girl for 20 years. So they're very different when it comes to romance, which is fun. Again, good characterization because the novels will all be very distinct and different just based on the protagonist, right? Just based on the different character types of the elements themselves. So, again, what a cool concept for a series. Like, I just absolutely love it. And something else I love with the Chaos Cousins is their relationship to Rose and how that progresses because it's so, so sweet and fun. And it really solidifies the novel and just makes it really wholesome and adorable. And so, first and foremost, Din, like I mentioned, Din is an only child, but so is Rose. Rose is also an only child. And when she's going through the house, like Din's house, and sees the photo of the cousins, she thinks to herself, compared to herself, this is Rose's thoughts. If she were to lose her father, she would be completely alone with no cousins. So when she sees the photo, she compares her life to Din's and thinks, wow, like Din lost her father and she still has love in her life because she has these cousins, which are her family. And she's like, if my dad were to die, I would have no one. Like I wouldn't have that. So there's this like element of loneliness or lack of family in Thailand. Like she has her aunt, but she's in, in America. And I think in that moment, like when comparing herself to Din, she realizes just how untethered she really is, especially because her father's in a coma. So it's kind of simulating the fact that she doesn't have the family support in Thailand. And that's not Rose's fault. Rose spent the most of her life in America with her aunt. And that was the family. She wanted to go back and see her dad, but like that was the consistent family she had. And now here she is and she's like, I don't if my dad were to die for real, like I have no one here. Like nobody physically, unless she could cajole her aunt to go live with her, like she would be alone. And then I think that makes it's a little sad when you think about Rose, whereas like Din didn't have that situation. Din actually, what Rose doesn't know is that Din had her father, Uncle Teep, who helped her through it really more than the cousins did. Because Din was a kid when it happened. The cousins are younger than her. Like Nam wasn't the genius hotel heiress at that time. Like that, she was a teenager. So when Rose is accepted into the Wathinwanit family, like it meant so much to her when that happened. Like when Din, I think after or during the fake wedding, the first wedding, it was such a huge moment for Rose when Din very explicitly explains to her that like she's like, hey, even though our marriage is fake, like you becoming a part of my family is real. Like you're a part of our family. We will all look out for you. So Rose is now tethered to a family in Thailand that's going to look out for her. Like even if the marriage is fake. And like that meant so much to Rose. Like especially coming off the cusp of like looking at the photo being like, "Oh man, I'm alone." And Din's like, "No, you'll never be alone. You might get sick of them, but they're yours now. No takesy backsies. You've met them." And the cousin whose acceptance takes the longest is Phi. But once Phi realizes that Din and Rose are like for real into each other, Phi becomes Rose's number one fan. Like, it's so ridiculous the way Phi is like literally on Rose's side no matter what. She's like, Rose, if Din ever pisses you off again, I will beat her up for you. And Din's like, what the hell? Are you taking her side? And Phi's like, yeah, no, I picked that one. Like, she picks Rose over Din, which is hilarious, honestly. And honestly, I think is the sweetest way that could have gone down because Phi and Rose are of a similar age. Like, I think Phi is younger. I don't know the exact ages, but it's kind of like the Modang and Rose situation. Like they're similar ages, and Rose and Phi would have the most in common, like life experience wise. So it's really sweet that they're the ones that bond, and like Phi is like super like fierce about it, and when it pisses off Dan, it's hilarious. So I absolutely love their dynamic. And it really means a lot to Rose. It's so cute. Something else I really love about the novel and the story in general is that we have positive father figures. Because in Thai girl love drama, we seem to be allergic to that sometimes, and for good reason, you know, because history. And so I appreciate that we have a modern story with modern dads, honestly. And so starting first with Tipacore and Rose's dad, he was much more in the story. He really, really, really did everything he could to prioritize Rose's well-being, especially amidst the insanity that is the politics on these fucking farms, man. Like, what the poor Rose, like the whirlwind it is for Rose to be like, there's what happening on these farms? I thought we were growing roses. We're human trafficking? What? Okay, but before we even get to the human trafficking, first of all, like Tipacorn, props to him because he breaks an arranged marriage contract, which, yes, it was informal between Wasu's family and his family, going back generations. Like he did that so his daughter can have her own autonomy. And really what he was doing is he was breaking tradition, which means a lot in conservative families, conservative countries, conservative circles, that kind of stuff. And in the process of doing that for the benefit of his daughter, he was potentially ruining his family's reputation. Because, like, as a businessman, businesses are made on deals, and here he is breaking a generations old deal. Like, that is a huge deal for him to do that and to stick so firmly in standing by his daughter. Like, when he says he loves her, like, he really means it and he really does everything to show how much he loves Rose. And I love that about him. And the other thing about the him breaking the arranged marriage contract, not only is it to gives Rose her autonomy, which yes, he also does it because he knows Wasu's a piece of shit. Okay. And so in chapter one, he talks about Wasu. I think he talks or has a thought about him. I can't remember. And he says about Wasu, once he has thrown them meaning women, once he has them meaning women, he breaks their hearts and discards them. I won't let Rose end up with somebody like that. So he's like, okay, I don't care if the marriage would benefit the family and would bind these two major farms together and be a great political marriage and empower us most. I would be marrying off or giving rather, my precious daughter to a monster who's going to treat her like she's not human. That's how much he loved her. He's like, no, like she deserves to be loved, not treated like trash. So props to Rose's dad for seeing that and then being like, absolutely not. Because sometimes poisonous love, dads see that and they're like, yeah, it's fine. That's fine. It's fine. That's normal. And it's like, what's wrong with you? So good for you, Tipacorn, for being like, I see he's trash and I'm not marrying my daughter to trash. Thank you. She deserves better. Other aspect of Tipacorn that I really like in the story is that he ends up becoming Din's surrogate father after her father passes away. And I really love the way their relationship builds. It's father-daughter, but it's also like master and apprentice. Like there's a lot of respect between the two of them, that mutual respect, where he helps her out, she helps him out. And it's kind of like a different kind of partnership in a way. But I really, really love it. And it really sets the stage for Tipacorn approving Din to marry Rose, which is such an old fashioned thing. Like, despite all the, like, I mean, it's Din, but despite all of the like modern, like, modern thinking involved here, where he's like, I want my daughter to marry a good person, not just marry for money and like do all this stuff. And then he ends up marrying Rose to this very old fashioned thinking person who is Din, who's like, I gotta ask your dad if I can kiss you first. Like, which she's very respectful. I'm not making fun of Din, but I am making fun of Din because it's easy and she's hilarious. And I just love that dopey lesbian to death. All right, and then speaking of Din also had a very positive biological father. She had Tipacorn, who's a very positive father figure, but she also had a good father as well. So her father was Cassadit. He was the oldest cousin. I think I am assuming the cousins, like not cousin. He's the oldest, yeah, cousin. The male cousins that started all of this. I'm pretty sure. I'm assuming that its age range goes back to the daughters as well. But we get less of him in the story for obvious reasons. But in the flashbacks that we do get, or the memories rather, from Din, it's really clear that he also really loved his daughter in a similar fashion to Tipacorn and Rose. So in chapter 3, one of my absolute favorite Cassadit moments is we get this memory from Din where she's feeling upset because she can't protect Rose because, Rose is her entire life. It took Din 20 years to realize she was in love with her. But anyway, Din. He's giving her this pep talk. where it was Sue, I think, bullied her, and he gives her this pep talk about of like basically that boils down to, you know, you may not be as strong as him physically, but you're strong in other ways. He's like, aren't you first in your class and like really intelligent and all this? He's like, use that. He's like, fight in your own way. Don't let people push you around. And he says to her, I want my din to be strong. Not so strong just so no one bullies you, but so that you never become a bully yourself. Like you don't turn into the evil in the world you're trying to fight. So I absolutely love that. Like it was such a great pep talk, and I think that that was one of the most impressionable things he said to Din and why that memory stuck with her, and it really shaped her because yeah, later on, Din is this really strong person, and there's several trials she goes through in this story where Din very easily could have given in completely to her worst urges, especially when it comes to Kaew later. But she doesn't. She remains really strong and refuses to like stoop to their level. She refuses to give in to her impulses the way other people do. And she remains this very good natured person. And sometimes that's the harder thing to do is to like restrain yourself and not act out and like do the right thing, even when it's hard. And that's Din. Like this pep talk explains Din, like when you get her as an adult. It's one of the, I think, one of the most important things in the novel is this pep talk with her dad. And it's so sweet that he did this with her. And fun fact, when I was looking at the name Cassadet, I was like, this name sounds really familiar. This was the last name for Pin in the Loyal Pin, and Auntie Pad was his first name. So fun fact. Okay. And I just want to get a little bit more into Rose and her father and things that I thought were interesting when it comes to the story. And when we like pick up when they're adults, Rose is coming back to Thailand and having these conversations with her dad about doing that. So, with her father, so her father was trying to essentially solve the human trafficking problem on the farm before she came back from America. Like, and in that space of 14 years, like when she left, human trafficking started happening. He's trying to solve all of this so she doesn't have to deal with it or something bad happens to her. And we get that scene in chapter 1 where Rose and her Aunt Laura, are discussing her father's promises to move her back to Thailand because apparently he made this made this promise a long, long time ago. And then Rose is like, it's been 14 years. What the hell? And Rose thinks uh, Dad always asked her to wait for him to quote take care of something end quote before she could come home. So meaning that like it's been 14 years and Dad keeps saying like yeah no like next year sweetie, next year I got to take care of something, got to take care of something. And so in a way he's like lying to her about like what's going on by lying by omission because he's there's something's going on, he has to solve it, but he's not telling her what it is, and she's an adult now, you know. And I don't think that like this is a intentional, it's purely intentional the way he's handling this situation with her as an adult. I think that the thing is that her father still sees Rose as like his little girl, you know? I mean, to some extent, fathers will kind of always, some parents like always see their children, no matter their age, as like their baby or whatever. And that's normal. I'm not saying that. I think what's significant in this story is that Rose and her father have lived apart for 14 years. So most of his memories of Rose, or most of his quality, consistent time that he spent with her, was when she was a little child. So I think that he, without realizing it, still sees her as this little helpless person that he needs to protect because she's too young to do it herself. And he doesn't fully see her as this intelligent, independent woman, which is what Din sees her as. And I think it has to do with the fact that his view of her is very skewed by the fact that they haven't consistently seen each other for 14 years. Like he has visited her and they keep in touch, but he's not with her in the way that like Aunt Laura is with her. Like Aunt Laura, maybe if she knew what was going on with the farm, maybe would have advised him to handle this a little bit differently because she knows adult Rose really well, you know? And like I need to like, and I keep going back to that line that he's like, my dad asked me to like quote, wait while I take care of something before she could come home. And to me, like that sentence, like that language, sounds like something you would tell a child, where you're like, Rose, I need you to be a big girl and take care of your aunt while I take care of something. Like, so I think that he still sees her as a child a little bit. And it's understandable why based on the narrative. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that, like, I think it kind of set her at a disadvantage at the beginning because she was underestimated by so many people. And I think her dad was also one of those people that unintentionally underestimated her capabilities a little bit. Um, because it's been in his mind, she's still like a little child, kind of thing. Other thing I love about the story in general is that the author did a really good job of creating actual despicable villains with a plausible plot. It wasn't this like caricature, cartoonish villain type thing. It felt unfortunately real. Like Wasu and Wasapul are human garbage, full stop. Involved in human trafficking. And honestly, I personally was not expecting a human trafficking plotline in a girl love at all, but like the author went there. And while it's horrific what was going on here, it's real. Looking at you, Epstein Files, America, the world. Like, it's unfortunately, this is a real plot line with horrible people and a human involving human garbage. Like, that's the Epstein Files. So it's real. And so to me, this plot line that was woven into this like love story and this family anthology of the Wathinwanit cousins, this plotline and the villains really gave the story actual high stakes that felt real. So it gave like really good dramatic scenarios where you felt like it was life or death. There's guns involved, like Din's at gunpoint multiple times, Din's shooting people, like it felt heightened. And so I love that about it because it made a lot of like the drama feel more real. Not real, but like it made it exciting in a way because it was just like there was like romance and then there's just like, oh, we're back to the human trafficking. Like, oh shit, oh, there's guns. Oh, there's a fire. Like, Din almost died again. And the thing I like about the way the villains were written is that they were like central to the plot because like without Wasul and his father, Rose and Din don't get fake married. Like they're central to the plot and what's happening, including the romance in a way, like adjacently. That was not their intention. They actually said gay rights, but we're going about it in a homophobic way. So jokes on you, bitches. But what I liked about them is like while they were central to the plot, they weren't too much. So like Wasapul and his father did not overpower the narrative the way the author sprinkled in their bullshit throughout. So I think someone did a good job at like sprinkling in these scenes with the villains with while maintaining and then like for most part they're not in it and she did a good job of balancing like them and their threats that they were or the pressure they were putting on, I guess, Din was there. It was this omnipresent thing throughout the story, even when they weren't in every single scene. So she was able to kind of like balance the scenes with having like a lot of Din and Roan stuff, Din and her cousins, and then having scenes with Wasu and Wasapul. And but you like felt the threat from these villains the whole time, even when there weren't that many scenes with them actually. So I think that was really brilliant the way she wrote it. Um, because oftentimes you'll just like cut to a scene with the villains having to explain everything, but like I think throughout Din and a lot of Din and Lam's dialogue they were like putting together what was happening with Wasu and his father without actually having to have a scene with Wasu and his father. So credit to the author for the way she plotted all of this out, and it gave us more time with the cousins, which is what we want. Okay, so great writing, absolutely love it. And like I mentioned, she did not make the villains cartoonish because I think that this author, one of her biggest strengths is that she's really good at characterizing people. And it very much shines through, even with the villains, even with the characters that aren't in it too much, like Kaew's father. And she's a great character writer. And honestly, it's one of my favorite things of books and just TV series and things like that. So I really resonate with this author a lot. I like the way she wrote it. All right. So I'm going to wrap up this section with favorite moments from the series, and then we'll jump into all the Din and Rose stuff and the novel. So I'm gonna start with my favorite Din moments because Din is one of my favorites, and Din is why we're here. So one of my favorite Din moments from the novel is in chapter 2 when Wasu and his men show up at uh, Rose's farm and they try to forcefully abduct Rose, and like Din gets pushed to the ground, then she gets up and then she's got a gun. And he's like, "You're not gonna do anything, Din." And then she fires the warning shot. What we didn't get in the series is Din's dialogue, where he's like, "You wouldn't actually shoot me." She shoots him, and then he's like, "Ha ha, you missed." And then she says, "Wasu, that was just a warning shot. Dot dot dot. Because if I had really meant to shoot, you wouldn't still be standing there asking who the first corpse would be." And I was like, what the fuck, Dan? Like, that was so dark. Like, her thoughts are actually very dark. Like, sometimes she goes to this place of just like insane seriousness like this. And I was like, holy shit, this is Din. It was wild. Like, I wish that was in the show because it's just like a wildly protect and fierce Din line. And it was amazing. Something else that was missing in the series that's funny in the novel is that one of Din's character quirks that's brought up by multiple characters is that she's loves her Jeep, which is so gay, and is possessive of the Jeep. Like she won't let other people drive it, touch it, look at it. And it's just like it's really funny. And I was like, that's such a gay like country girl thing. I just love that that's Din's character quirk. It's so real. And other thing I love about Din is one of our favorite scenes with her is why she took the wedding so seriously. So, you know, Din basically like even though their first wedding was a fake wedding, like she wanted it to be perfect and be this happy memory, and she like put so much time and effort into it, not just to sell it, but because she wanted to. And she thinks to herself, like, when it's kind of all said and done and planned out, it was sweet. It made her feel warm inside. It made her excited. Her heart fluttered with excitement as if it were her real wedding day. Like, Din was so fucking cute throughout this whole thing. The way she's like, all of her smiles and stuff are just genuine and real, and it's adorable. And I love that about Din. She's a little softy in heart at heart. Other favorite Din moments are just anytime Rose would say something innocent and Din's brain immediately jumps to sex. It was just any she did it so many times because she's so thirsty but fucking ridiculous at the same time. Especially the wedding night where Rose is like, let's just stay up all night and strengthen our bond because we don't fucking know each other. And then Din's like, what? Does that mean sex? Like she's so fucking funny and awkward about it. And I just love how awkward she is. She's so funny. Okay. And then my favorite Rose moments. I have a lot of favorite Rose moments. Rose is actually pretty fucking funny and epic, and I do love Rose as a character. So one thing first and foremost is when she's talking about the marriage proposal with Modang, and Modang's like, you don't love her now, but like look at people in the past. They had Stockholm syndrome. They fell in love after marriage. And Rose is like, no thanks. I'm a modern woman. So I love that we established that Rose has been living in America for 14 years and is like, I'm not about this. I am an independent woman. That's the end of that. I need to be in love with the person I marry. Thanks. And then I also love when Rose first defends Din. So when Wasapul comes to like basically tarnish Din's reputation and threaten her before the wedding, and then Rose shows up in the novel, you really you're in Rose's head and you get a sense of just how fucking furious she was. She's basically like, I was too furious to be like self-conscious or anything when she walks up to Din and like takes Din's arm and starts being like physically affectionate with her. She was just so pissed off that like it didn't register with her. And she thinks to herself in that moment, I wanted to protect Din in my own way, which is what Din's dad said to Din when she was younger, which was cute. And when it's over and Waspel leaves, Rose explains that to Din, that she's like, I'm going to find a way to protect you in my own way because you're protecting me. And the cousins are in the background listening in on this conversation. And when Rose explains this to Din, that's when Fi accepts Rose because she sees how fiercely Rose wants to protect Din and like, which is what Fi wants. And she's like, oh shit, we have this in common. I respect you, Rose. Okay, then speaking of fire, one of my favorite fucking moments in this book is Rose's reaction the first time Fi smiles at her when she's doing the lady boss Rose thing. Because in the novel they translate as lady, but they translate as boss in the series. When she starts doing that shit, and Rose is like, "What are you doing?" Fi smiles at her, And Rose thinks to herself, this is one of my favorite things. She's like, and most shockingly of all, Achima smiled at her again. Sure, it was still a fierce, slightly terrifying smile, but it was progress. I love that the smile's terrifying, but it's so fucking funny. Like their relationship is probably one of my favorites in the whole story because it's chaotic and but it's also really sweet and adorable. And I love that they kind of have this bond with each other. But it's like it is rocky until it's smooth. It's so funny. One thing that was in the novel that's not in the series that I really loved is when Rose and Din come back from their honeymoon, the first one. Rose brings back an entire suitcase of gifts for Modang, and I thought that was really sweet. And she has her unload it from the carpet. She's like, "That's for you." Like she got her so many souvenirs. She had a whole suitcase full, which was just really sweet and shows how thoughtful Rose is. And again, that they do have a friendship style relationship too, despite the like boss employee thing. And Rose does think of Modang, which is really cute. I also love when Rose starts becoming consciously possessive of Din. One thing that the author puts in there is this like lipstick mark thing that keeps coming up. So at the wedding goes down very differently in terms of like the kiss scene. So at the wedding, what happens is neither of them know what to do because they're ridiculous. So Rose is like, I guess I'll initiate it because Din never does anything. And so she kisses Din on the cheek. There was no fainting. There's no the series was ridiculous where Din faints, which is yes, she's so gay, she faints. But in the novel, she doesn't. And so Rose notes that when she does that, there's a lipstick print on Din's cheek. And there's a callback in the series in episode 6 when she's like, ooh, a lipstick mark. That's from the novel. So anytime that Rose feels possessive of Din, she will touch that spot where the lipstick was or kiss it again. And in chapter 7, Rose thinks to herself, she wanted to keep that mark there so it wouldn't fade. So it becomes this like tangible and then symbolic thing, and Rose like attaches meaning to it. And I like the way the author used that. And I think it's cute that it starts at the wedding as this like impromptu, oh shit, we gotta do something thing. But then Rose starts being like, no, I want that to be real, is basically what she's saying. It's cute the way it was written. Okay, and then last favorite Rose moment is when they're in Chiang Mai. Okay, and Rose's jealousy revealed something that was really funny to me that was in the novel. So in that scene, there's Din's there, and then the hotel owner's daughter, Khan, I think is her name, hits on Din because this person's had a crush on Din forever. And then Rose gets jealous, obviously, and she thinks to herself, quote, even without Kaew around, now there was Khan. What was it with Din and women whose name begin with K? And I thought this was really funny because it's such a queer person thing. At least it's something I relate to because like I went through a period of time where like I only had girlfriends whose names started with J, and it was like, what the fuck is this all about? But it was like this circumstance thing with those like they just all happen to have the same name, but it was just like a funny thing. And so like Salmon, I see you, girl. I see you. Like that was such it's a queer person thing. I thought it was fucking funny that it was in here. Because Din is such a useless lesbian. She like defines the term, let's be honest. All right. Before we wrap this section up and get into Din and Rose's romance, last thing I had to talk about in terms of favorite moments in the novel are my favorite cousin moments. So my favorite cousin moments are anytime somebody outs Din to Rose, like Lom constantly being like, she's into you. Like, you know, it was ridiculous. I also really loved I read Phi's introduction before watching the series, and I will never be over the way that character's introduced by just like barging in and being like, I'm marrying this woman instead. I've never met her before. What's your name? Yes, that one. And just like the way she just barges in, inserts herself, and then like, I didn't even know you're here. Like, also the amount of times that Phi just shows up randomly is hilarious to me. But her introduction was just so unhinged. I just loved it. Speaking of unhinged moments, the one time that Lam flirted with Modang was also hilarious. So what happens is that Lam comes to the farm looking for Din and Rose and asks Modang, like, where are they? And then Modang tells her wherever they are. And then Lam says, thanks a lot, beautiful Modang. And Modang, without skipping a beat, replies, oh, Lam, you always tease me with the truth. Like, it was just iconic behavior for both of them. Like Lom just being the flirt that she is, and then Modang with her unwavering confidence being like, "You flatter me. I already know I'm hot." Like, it was just so funny. Like those two, I wish they interact more because they were just both so chaotic. And lastly, my favorite cousin moment is Phi third wheeling Din and Rose. It happens quite a bit, but my absolute favorite, which just happened in episode 6, is it's in chapter 11 of the novel. So when Din is pressing Rose to explain why, she's like, "Oh, you felt all possessive and jealous of me. Like, why, Rose? Please tell me. You went to tell me the other day, and then we didn't get to finish this." And then she's like pressing Rose, and Rose is on the cusp of saying, "I like you." Okay, she's like stuttering. And then Phi just jumps in. Phi just jumps in. She's like, "Din, are you okay?" And then Din's like, "Phi, what? Why are you even here? You're here? Nam's here? What the hell?" And then Rose awkwardly gets out of this conversation and leaves. And then Phi's looking at Din and she's like, "Why do you look like that, Din? Aren't you happy we came?" It's like, "No, Phi, you just want black Din." And Din's not okay. But it was so funny because, like, you don't know in the novel, you don't know what's going on. You're just trapped with Din and Rose, and then suddenly they're screaming. You're like, I don't know. And also Nam shows up and it gets funnier. Okay. Because on the cusp of that, um, Rose and then Din get in a misunderstanding, and then Din upsets Rose by accident because Kaew comes to see her after the fire and is like, "Are you okay?" All that drama happens, and Nam is there, and Nam starts talking to Din. Okay, Nam, the woman of few words, and she's like, "Din, I've planned many weddings, not funerals." But I think I need to start booking a grave for you. Because Rose looks so pissed she's gonna kill you. It was so funny. Like, of all the cousins for Nam to be like, "I think I gotta start digging your grave, cousin." You're toast. It was so funny. Anytime they gave Din shit, it was really fucking funny. And last favorite cousin moment is the everyone knows except them moment, which also happened in episode 6. So Din basically tells her cousins, and I think it's all of them that are there, that she likes Rose for real, and it's like just like nobody reacts. So then Din's like, "Oh wait, you all knew?" And then Lom says, "Din, anyone watching from space could tell." That was so fucking funny. She's like, "You guys are so stupid." And then you're wondering why Phi is being all weird and shit, and you're like, "Yep, well, we all figured it out a long time ago. That's why Din's planning your funeral. That's why Nam's planning your funeral." Anyway, they're so stupid. I just love how stupid Din is sometimes. But it's like that oblivious. She's sweet and just oblivious to everything. And just like she like psychs herself out. She's so nervous sometimes. It's very cute. But her cousins are so funny. And together, the way they banter with each other is just everything. And anytime they're all in a room together and there's just like dialogue with them, it's just utter perfection. I love it. All right, before we jump into Din and Rose's relationship from start to end, we're going to take a brief moment to give some shout outs to our Chaos crew over on Patreon. So, woo! Okay, so for those on the Big Gay Ride or Die tier or above, this is our $15 a month tier where our members get exclusive bonus content, bonus episodes, bonus reactions, things like that. Thank you guys specifically for all of your support. So, as a thank you to you, Caitlin and I will always give you guys a shout out in every one of our episodes. So, at the time of filming, that tier contains Amex Mon Zone _ Multi, Ash, You So Stunning, BJR, Danny, Isla, Ellie, Erica Lack. I don't know how to say your name. Eric Clack, blame Caitlin. Here for it, Jasmine O, Jill L, Cassie M, Kelsey S, Leona, Michelle G, Monet F, Moving Forward Leading, Nancy D, Pooja S, Regina B, and Wurjapichin. So thank you all for all of your support. And for our biggest and largest tier, this is the Big Gay Supporter members. For this tier pays $5 a month. They get access to all of our content, often earlier than Patreon or the podcast platforms, and they get no ads. Thank you all for your support. Just going to give a couple of those. There's over 100 plus of you guys. I can't name all of you or this episode will never end. So I'm just going to give a shout out to some featured members. And those are the ones that have been interacting with our Earth content over on Patreon the most consistently. So those members are White Cat 112, Kaew, Charlotte Charlotte C, twice underscore Ty underscore GLs, Kim Pond, BJR. Oh wait, no, BJR. BJR, you tricked me. You're in a ride or die tier. Anyway, double shout out to you, Issa and Zoriam. So thank you all for all of your support, and thanks for interacting with the Earth. I hope you're enjoying this novel retelling / discussion. Alrighty, so thank you everyone, and with that, we will move on to Din and Rose's relationship. So let's start at the beginning. So they are the classic childhood friends to wait, we're dating, always have been trope. Their relationship started when Din was 10 and Rose was 4. So they had quite an age gap as kids. And 4-year-old Rose views Din as an older sister, obviously. Like, I mean, looks up to her, thinks that they were close, close as kids when they grew up. And Rose was really aware of Din's insecurity and reality at the time, that Din wasn't able to protect her on her own. But Rose was very aware that Din was, quote, the warmest person she knew. And that was how Rose described Din when she was 4 years old, which is pretty remarkable that she was associating warmth with Din when she was 4. It's quite young. And the narrative throughout the story really harps on Din's inability to protect Rose all by herself, which I've been over, and especially particularly in comparison to Wasu, because they all kind of grew up together, those three. And even though Wasu was capable, Wasu was always bullying Din and causing a bunch of trouble, which Rose remembers too, that he was a troublemaker even when he was a kid. And so I do wonder about this comparison between like Din and Wasu, and like the I'm not able to protect you as a kid, but I am as an adult situation that goes on between Rose and Din in their relationship. And I do wonder if it's meant to demonstrate there was an imbalance that existed when Din and Rose were children. Like, Rose needed protection, Din couldn't protect her fully. So it's almost like this fate thing where fate's kind of saying, well, now's not the time for the two of you to be fully be together. You guys need to grow a bit, which makes sense. They're kids. Obviously, they're kids. But then 14 years later, when they're adults, both Din and Rose have now both grown into very capable women. And so they're equal. So now it's like fate's like, okay, go forth and be gay. You guys did it. You're worthy of each other, whatever. So it's kind of like this like imbalance. They achieve balance and then they get their happily ever after thing. And I like that narratively. I think that fits into like, you know, a lot of like Eastern philosophies really harp on, or not harp, but like value balance. And so that would be an imbalance to a balance. And that would be a good relationship narrative that I like. So when they're adults, they reunite. That's when the story really picks up. And it's really obvious that Din has been pining for 14 years for Rose. Yep. I think even maybe Tipicorn kind of picked up on that also, because he was the one keeping her in the loop about what was going on with Rose. He was obviously was like, I'm so proud of my daughter, but also like Din is like got hard eyes. Like, you can see them from space, to quote Lom. And when Rose sees Din again, the biggest thing that Rose notices is Din's expressions. And so she notes to herself, Rose, the serious expression on Din's face, devoid of all emotion, and the absence of the smile she used to give me in response to my chattering. So she noticed that like Din is just very serious all the time and like never smiles. And Din starts thinking that like, or not Din, Rose starts putting that together with the big thing that changed, which is not her leaving, but Din's father passing away. And if you think about Din, like when her father passed away, she was really forced to grow up really quickly because suddenly she had to be the leader of the farm and the family. She's the oldest cousin. She's like the next generation. Her father's gone. She can't let the farm fail. All these workers are depending on her. Like she inherits all these dependents and she's like, fuck. Well, and Din is strong enough to rise to the occasion and do it. But I think she had to sacrifice a lot to do it. So her innocence, her youth, in a way, her wants and needs, like I mentioned before, I think a lot of that was lost. And so Din just became this very serious person because she put all her effort into serious things like running the farm, taking care of other people. But I think the narratively, another thing the author's trying to get at is that like Din's happiness is Rose, and Din doesn't start to become happy and like unserious until Rose starts interacting with her more. Because I think that was like Rose is a part of her past before Her father passed away before Din had the weight of the world, the weight of her family on her. She was more free and carefree, and I think that she associates that with Rose in a way. And so when Rose comes back, I think a lot of those emotions and like Din's wants and Din's desire to be carefree and have fun, I think all of that comes back when Rose comes back because Rose forces her to kind of confront it just by being Rose. And I think that like that's why like Din associates happiness with Rose. And in a way, it's kind of similar to if you've watched or read Affair, like Chow Planoy's novel. Like it's a very similar thing happens, like minor spoiler, like after Juan Viva and Playing, they're separated for almost the same amount of time. Like when they're back in each other's orbits, Playing is like Juan Viva never smiles. And it has to do with the fact that playing when she doesn't have Playing, she doesn't smile. When she has Playing, she smiles. So it's kind of similar to it's a similar kind of like a like romance trope, I would guess, between Din and Rose. But I think with Din and Rose, it more so had to do with like all these events that went on. And not that it didn't go on an affair, it did. But I'm not here to spoil Affair. I'm here to spoil the Earth. So I think a lot of that was tied up in Din's association with happiness and Rose. Even when they're reunited, one thing I really love about their relationship, what really drew me to the story was how respectful it was. So starting with Din, like Din from the get-go is so incredibly respectful of Rose. So in chapter 1, when Rose is trying to figure out what the fuck to do in this insane situation, she's like, who do I believe? Like Wasu, who's telling me Din's trash, or Din, who's like, yo, your dad told me to take care of you. I'm here to take care of you, kind of thing. And so she asks them independently. Is when she's testing them to be like, who do I trust? When she asks them, Din responds, when Rose is like, who do I believe, you or him? And she's like, well, you need to make up your own mind because no one can decide for you. You're an adult, Rose, and I believe you can make this decision on your own. So I love how respectful Din is. And Din always saw Rose as a capable human being, and like that's evident in that dialogue. But also, like she respects Rose as a person and respects her opinions. And what I love about their relationship is that it's mutual. The respect is very, very, very mutual. When they have the fake marriage, Din and make sure to tell Rose, like, look, this is fake. Yes, people legally have to get married because property, etc. But like, if you fall in love with somebody or you don't want to do this anymore, you just tell me. We will end it. Like, your life is more important and what you want is more important than like us doing this to like to stop human trafficking or whatever we're doing. And I love that Rose does it right back. She's like, Din, that's mutual. Like, I know you're doing this to help me, but also, like, don't sacrifice everything for this. Like, you can also divorce me at any time. Like, things like that. So I love that they have this mutual respect between them. And that's very consistent throughout their entire relationship. And so they get fake married, and then when they get fake married, that's really when they get to know each other better as adults. Not fully, but better, okay? And that's when they realize that, like, they've had these feelings for each other all along. Like, the warmth Rose was feeling was, like, the budgeoning of, like, an affection for Din that turns romantic when they're older. And I do like when they start getting to know each other more, and Rose learns more about Din's life, like particularly what she's been through the past 14 years, where Din explains that she took over a Sunrock farm when her father died. And it's a lot more explicit what's going on, what went on with Din in the novel when Din's kind of explaining this. And she tells Rose how she struggled for years. Like Rose is always like, man, you make this look so easy. And Din's like, it wasn't always. Like, I struggled for years to figure this out. And I had nobody. Like, I didn't have my dad to teach me. But then explains that, like, your dad helped me. That's why we're close. And then she says something to me that was important in terms of, like, how Din probably didn't take care of herself, where she says, I didn't have time to go on vacations or set aside my responsibilities. With so many workers depending on me, I just couldn't. So that tells me that when Din became fully responsible for the farm, her life became small and limited to her enormous duty on the farm. Like she says, I could not set aside my responsibilities. Like she could never stop working because the duty was too big. And I get the sense that Din did neglect taking very good care of herself or indulging into what she wants and needed because she was constantly trying to take care of others for years. And Rose, I think, recognizes how much Din has changed and how much that responsibility really changed her. And that's where she's like, it manifests as the smile. Okay, the smile's gone. That's why she's like, oh, that's why she's never like carefree. She's so serious. And Rose thinks Din had gone from a bright and cheerful girl to someone distant and reserved, cutting herself off from the people outside of her closest cousins. So Din did isolate herself in a way. She didn't mean to, but it was like she had to in order to fulfill these enormous responsibilities. And then as Rose and Din interact more, Rose starts noticing when Din smiles at her for real with warmth. And she notes that the smiles are warm. Okay, that's like Rose's feelings and Din's feelings. So like that's Din's tell. Okay, like her tick. Okay, where Rose is like, Din's having real feelings right now, kind of thing. And then in chapter 7, Rose notes when one of those smiles happens that it was a smile straight from Din's heart and it reached right into hers. So Din's warm smile basically means I love you, and Rose puts that together pretty early. And along the lines of the smiling, Rose is not the only one that notices that Din's smiling more. Kaew also realizes it, and she brings it up very awkwardly to the reader who's reading it. I was like, oh dear. And she's like, why are you smiling so much, Din? And Din's like, Rose brought happiness back into my life, which is very sweet and cute, but also causes some drama later when we get into Kaew's story, which we'll go over. All right, so then after they get married, they go on the honeymoon. They go to Prachup and stay at one of Nam's resorts. And obviously this was orchestrated by the cousins because Din deserves it. And they're also like, yeah, no, this needs to be plausible or whatever. And like, people are they're gossipy motherfuckers. You gotta go. But I think that this was orchestrated because I think even they realized that Din needs a fucking vacation because she hasn't had one in years. Okay, like a real break. And so this honeymoon is significant in the fact that this is one of the first times since her father died that Din slowed down enough in her life to like appreciate the present. Because there's a lot of dialogue in there where Rose is like, what do you want to do? This and that. And Din's like, I don't know. Well, we don't have to be anywhere in the morning. I don't have to get up at a certain time. I don't have to do things. She's like, we could just do whatever. So Din hasn't had that. Din like lives by her schedule. She's like, I gotta be in Chiang Mai today to talk to a supplier. I gotta be here. I gotta be there. I gotta be there. I gotta be here. I'm sleeping in my office because I'm too tired. So there's a lot of just like being present in the moment in this honeymoon that's important coming from Din. And I think it's really significant that Din is having this first break with Rose. And I think it's important that Rose was there while Din was kind of like taking a break because Rose is the change, like the catalyst for Din to kind of like revert back to some of her, childhood self, which was the more carefree, affection, like not that Din isn't affectionate, but like openly affectionate and like giving it to her whims, her emotions in a healthy way, kind of thing. And I think that like it's important that Rose was here when Din goes on her first vacation in like years. When they're on the honeymoon, something I love that happens that I think is so important for the relationship is that Rose demands equality in their relationship. Okay. So, like, again, Rose is always like, Din, what do you want to do? And Din's like, whatever you want, Rose. I'll do whatever. What my favorite thing is your favorite thing. And Rose starts getting fed up with this. And she says to Din, you're just agreeing with me again. I'm suggesting plans so we can come up with ideas together, but you're letting me decide everything. And I love that Rose consistently makes equality in their relationship a sticking point because she's a modern woman after all. And one of the reasons I love that Rose does this is that by saying things like this, it actually leads to healthy communication between the two of them, which is a weakness of Din's. And I think that's something that Rose brings to the table that actually makes Din a better person overall, because Rose is like, we need to talk and communicate like therapists. This is therapy, Din. And Din's like, okay, let me express with words, Din, and like forces Din to communicate because she's horrible at communicating. Because she doesn't, outside of business, she doesn't have to communicate her feelings, so she doesn't know how to do it, which is valid. So Rose says to Din, if you always go along with whatever I want and never express what you actually want, eventually you'll start feeling suffocated. But if you start being honest instead of just agreeing with me, we'll be able to truly understand each other. And then Din responds, anything that makes you happy makes me happy. Rose is so speechless. She doesn't say anything. But in her brain, she's like, Din is so fucking stubborn. I'm not talking to her anymore. You're useless. But I just love that Rose tries, and she's like, no, Din, you can't just like give me everything I want. Like, what the fuck do you want? And Din's like, I just want you to be happy. She's like, no, bitch, you gotta want things. And while it's funny and comedic, I do wonder if like Din really doesn't know what she wants, honestly, because she's never had enough time and mental space to actually think about that. You know what I mean? Which is actually kind of sad when you think about Din, because all Din has been doing is work, 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 take care of cousins, work, 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 take care of cousins. And then Rose comes back in the picture and it's work, Rose, take care of cousins, Rose, work, work, Rose, 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 Rose. So like she doesn't know, she doesn't have time. I don't think Din knows who she is, honestly. And like hasn't really thought, what do I actually want? And then when it comes to Rose, and Rose is constantly badgering her, being like, tell me, Din, tell me, Din, tell me, Din. I think over time Din becomes better at that, but is they're in a weird place right now where it's like it's real but it's fake. So I think Din also has that barrier to expressing herself, but I think it's really good that Rose presses Din on this, because like this is an area of her character where like Din should improve or should take the time to think, what does she want? Because I don't think Din really has ever asked herself that question until Rose keeps pestering her about it, you know. And then Din comes to the conclusion like, Rose, I want Rose, like that's what I want. I want her in my life. She makes me better, she makes me happy, she forces me to like take care of myself and like give into what I want. And like, and I think that's good for Din to have somebody like Rose who's like, you need to also put you first because you keep saying that to everybody else. And that's kind of what Rose is saying in this conversation. And she's like, and if we don't do this, it's going to cause resentment in our relationship. And I don't want that. And I like that Rose does that. It's very mature, especially coming from somebody who's never been in a relationship. Like the way Rose advocates for shaping their relationship is really mature. Honestly, it sounds like she has experience, which is pretty cool. Then Rose and Din move on to after the honeymoon. And so then we get the drunk wives thing. Okay, and this goes down different than the show, and I honestly love it. Okay, so then what starts in, it's chapter 9. So when Din's the first one. Din comes home drunk after the business meeting. And it's this very like the way it goes down is so funny. Okay, so once Rose gets drunk Din into their room, she gets fed up with Din's drunk ass and refuses to help her because Din is being stubborn and is basically like, no, Rose, I'll just go in another room, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to help me. And then she's like, oh my God, Din, you obviously need help. You're not letting me help you. Well, fuck you. Like, you're on your own. So then Din drunkenly tries to get up and then gets dizzy and falls. And then it cuts to Rose's thoughts. Chef's kiss to the author. This is what Rose is thinking. If this was a drama, everything would have happened in slow motion. Every second would stretch out dramatically. But this was reality. And in reality, it was not romantic at all. So what actually happens in the novel? They tumble onto the bed. Din falls on top of Rose. And Rose thinks, oh my God, is she going to kiss me? Am I going to let her kiss me? Oh my God, this is romantic. But then Din just asks Rose if she can move because her arms are tired. And then once when she's off of Rose, Din just passes out in the bed. And then Rose thinks, so in real life, nothing actually happened. Now, I love that this series, which is an actual drama, decided to do the stereotypical TV drama stuff when it came to these drunk shenanigans, because it honestly makes this scene in the novel even funnier when she's like, oh my God, is my life going to be like a drama? And then Rose is like, nope, none of this shit does not happen in real life, by the way. It's just a mess in real life. And so I love that you have the scenes to compare where like the series was like, yeah, but we're a drama, so we're actually going to do the stereotypical drama shit. Sorry, novel, but it's like a little nod to the novel because the novel was trying to make a joke about that, and the series is like, yeah, we'll be the joke. So it's kind of funny. I actually do like that. I think it's hilarious. Okay, so then let's like continue and get on the other half of that. So then later, when they're in Chiang Mai and Rose is drunk, Rose drunkenly tries to actually play out the drama scene in the novel by pushing Din onto the bed and falling on top of her. And in the scene, Rose is fueled by jealousy and advice from Modang, which is a winning combination. So Rose starts drunkenly rambling that she needs to make the first move. And Din is so confused. And then Rose clarifies, I'm done with being jealous. Why do all these women keep going after you? You already have a wife. You have me. And Din's like, Rose. And then Rose says, I will take the lead this time. She like yells it at Din. And then Rose, she's just so aggressive. It's so funny. And then she leans in and then Din gay panics. And then Rose passes out before anything happens. And then Din's inner monologue is everything to me because Din, it proves how self-aware Din is of the ridiculousness in real life. And Din thinks to herself, she was just relieved. Because if it had happened, if Rose had kissed her while being this drunk, Would she have been able to stop herself? And more importantly, would she have wanted to? And so I like that Din is like, that would have been wrong because she's drunk, but I don't know that I'd be able to control myself because Din has been pining for Rose for 14 years, which is understandable. So like Din is like ultimately relieved that Rose passed out before Rose could finish whatever the hell she was about to do. Because Din's like, I don't think I would have been able to control myself. And normally I control myself, and this was wrong. So I like that Din was self-aware of like, it's this, like, while this scenario is presented as romantic and dramas, like it isn't always. Like, Rose is not in a consentable position, and, like, Din's like, "I don't know that I could have stopped myself because feelings," which is a valid thing to be afraid of. And it's after this moment here, these drunken shenanigans, that when Din promises to show Rose her true feelings through her actions and admits to herself that, like, she hasn't been faking this. Like, Din does admit it to herself. And she's like, I may not be able to say I care, but I will show you. As if she hasn't been showing her for 14 years, but like, whatever, Din. Din is self aware, but not always self aware. But something I love about the novel and Rose in general is that Rose, while Rose is a jealous person, she's aware that it's irrational. Okay. And she's aware of this, and a self aware character. And I do love this. So after the fire in the office where Din almost dies, that's when Rose runs to Din and then confesses that she's possessive of Din and gets jealous of her for real because, quote, I just realized it myself that I'm a jealous person. So this is something that was in the novel that wasn't in the series. And I love this because, again, Rose is self-aware, okay? And jealousy is something that comes up in relationships. It can come up. It's something that's played into pretty heavily in a lot of Thai girl love dramas as a plot point, as a cause for drama. It definitely comes up in the story a lot, but it's kind of like the situation where Rose has never been in a relationship before, has never had feelings before, and then starts feeling jealousy like for the first time when it comes to Din, and like doesn't know how to handle it. And I think that's a really valid human experience. But Rose becomes aware of it and then like deals with it. And I think that's what separates the way this story is written from a lot of other dramas that just have the jealousy. The other girl like makes her stop being jealous and then we just move on. This has like the processing of this emotion in the story that I enjoy. And Rose learns that she's the jealous type and she didn't know she was because she never had feelings for anybody before. And I love that Rose in the story, even after she's aware of it, like still feels the feeling because they're not controllable. She feels it, knows this is an irrational emotion she's having. But emotions can't always be controlled. You just have to like feel it while it's happening. The thing that Rose can control, and she learns she can control, is whether or not to act on her impulses when she's having the jealous emotion. So in chapter 13, Rose explains this to Din in the context of Kaew, because that's where this like jealousy mostly pops up. And Rose says to Din, quote, I trust your words, Din. Because Din's like, I don't feel that way about her. And Rose says, I trust what you're saying to me, Din. I believe you, is what she's saying. But my heart just gets all twisted up whenever I see Kaew near you. I can't control it. I don't even know why I feel this way. I hate it. So I love that Rose says this. It's just such a mature thing to say, where she's basically saying, like, Din, I feel jealous, and it has nothing to do with you. This is me. I'm feeling this. Like, and I not that I don't trust you. I don't trust the way. I just feel weird, and I don't know why, and I hate that I feel this way. Din, like the dumbass that she is like, no, I'm into it. I love it. I love it. Because she's like, that means you care. Um, and then she's like, it's okay, Rose, I'll help you control the feeling. Don't worry about it. I love you. That's what she does. And it's like, Din, that wasn't okay. And I think that does help Rose because it's like, it is an insecurity thing, but also like, Din. Din's so funny sometimes, the way she just solves problems. It's just, she's all in all the time, is the thing. Okay, and then after Din says, I love you, like this is when Din and Rose in the novel kiss for the first time. And it's really sweet that like this is after Din gets shot, I think. And then Din, what happens? Din is the one that initiates it. And it's really like sweet and like romantic the way Din does it. But then Rose gets real thirsty real fast. And then accidentally like is like getting handsy with Din and then like agitates the gunshot wound basically on Din's body. And that ends this. But like it's really sweet, and I like that that's their first kiss in the novel. It's a very, like, because it's a very them thing. Like, while they have, like, this, like, they're modern women or whatever, they have this, like, old-fashioned, like, old school kind of, like, she's the girl next door kind of there's, like, 1,000 tropes roped into one, and they're all very old-fashioned, classic romantic tropes built into Din and Rose. And so it would be that, like, I say I love you, then I kiss you kind of thing. Although, like, they get married first, then start dating. So there's also that, which is pretty funny. Okay. But on the topic of the jealousy, particularly when it comes to Kaew, one thing Salmon does really well is shows that human beings make mistakes, and making a mistake is not an end all be all type of thing. People can either learn from the mistake and be better, or keep making the same mistakes and never grow, kind of thing. And so she does have that play out with Rose. So one thing Rose regrets in the novel is the way she treats Kaew, especially when she's feeling jealous and gives into her jealousy and does things like, I have to prove that I'm her wife, or I have to prove that Din's mine, that kind of stuff, to make Kaew back off. And as Rose becomes more self-aware of her jealousy and then realizes that she's the type of person that gets jealous, she starts to regret the fact that she hurt Kaew's feelings, and eventually apologizes for this, what she views as a mistake, or for being irrational or immature about it and things like that. Like, and well, I'll get into Kaew later and, like, all of her stuff, but, like, I like that Rose goes on that journey of being like, oh, I did, I acted poorly in that situation. I feel badly about it. She learns from it and then, like, grows into a better person. And I just like the fact that the author takes the time to have her characters, when they make a mistake, they make it, they reflect on it, and it's a process for Rose to, like, really reflect it, because that's how it works sometimes, like, really. And then she ultimately, like, apologizes, atones, and, like, grows and moves on. And that's human growth. And I like that it's really embedded in multiple characters. And, like, Rose is one of the big ones. Kaew is the other one. And I will get into Kaew separately once we go through the Din and Rose stuff. So then Din and Rose, after this, start dating for real. And Din asking out Rose was one of the biggest hot messes in the whole the whole story. So she's a mess. So then, okay, so they get into a fight for where Rose is jealous of Kaew. And Din tries to clear it up by telling Rose, like, she's like, no, I like you though. I really like you. And Rose is hurt and doesn't believe it, because, like, she's feeling jealous and, like, doesn't know what to do with the feelings and hates that she's feeling them. So then Din hugs her and asks Rose. This is actually, the ask out is Rose's fault, because she asks Rose, do you want me to be honest? And Rose is like, yes. And then Din says, I want a wife. And Rose doesn't say anything. So then Din says, do you want to be my real wife, Rose? And it's like, what the fuck, Din? Like, it's cute. But, like, what is she supposed to say to these weird things you're constantly saying to her? Like, all the time, okay? She's so awkward. And the dialogue, it's cute. Like, Rose is like, oh, what the fuck? But, like, Din explains the reason she says that is, she's like, well, I wanted you to know how serious I was. So it's not that I like you. It's like, I like you so much that I'm thinking about marrying you for real. Like, that's what Din was trying to say, but that just comes out as, like, let's be married for real. And it's like, Din, yes, she's terrible with words and it causes problems. But it's like, it comes from a sweet place. It's like, it really does. Like, that was very sweet what she was trying to do, and, like, trying is the key word. She's trying. And so eventually they agree to start with dating or marriage, like normal people. And what's really cute is that after this, they decide to do this. The cousins then just collectively decide to start calling Rose the cousin-in-law, which is just the fucking cutest thing ever. All right. Now we get in, then we transition after this into the Kaew's redemption arc. And we get into the big reveal that she's the mole, she's the villain, all that kind of stuff. Part of the villain story. And honestly, when it comes to her character arc in this novel, I'm actually not mad at the fact that she's a redemption arc, because the way Salmon wrote it was fucking epic and really great. Because what the author did is they humanized Kaew as a person that acted on her worst impulse, felt guilty about it, realized she made a huge mistake, and then made amends for it. Like, people make mistakes and they can choose to be better or worse based on the mistake. Like making a mistake is not this end all be all black and white thing, actually. It can be a learning opportunity, even when your mistake causes horrible harm. And that's kind of what the author is going for. And I actually like that. So the shitty part is that, like, Kaew is aware that Din fully trusted her, which makes the betrayal all that more painful. Because, like, Din saw her as a sister because they basically kind of grew up together in a similar way. Although, like, she was an employee on Din's farm. Well, not an employee. Her father was employed by Din's father to, like, work at the farm. And, like, Din's father made sure that Kaew went to school, and he almost, like, treated her as, like, a surrogate daughter in a way. And so they kind of grew up as siblings, is the thing. And Kaew harbored a crush on Din for about 10 years. And she, in her mind, was waiting for Din to, quote, turn around and see that she was the one that's always been right behind Din, like, waiting for her to turn around. And, like, it's basically, like, I have this one-sided crush on you. I'm just going to wait for you to realize that, like, I've always been there for you. I'm always right by you. Like, see me. I've just been with you the whole time, kind of thing. But Din just saw her as a sister, and, like, in Din's mind, family sticks together. And so, like, that never clicked. And then from Kaew's point of view, that Rose comes back, and then Rose is the one that, like, steals Din from her, and in a way sours Kaew's love for Din, and Kaew's love turns into obsession, possession, which is, like, the toxic version of, like, quote, love. There's, like, a fine line between those, love and, like, possession and obsession, and they very much mean different things for the person feeling whatever that is. So then, feeling all of that, Kaew works on her, or gives into her worst impulse, which is to team up with the villain, which is Wasu. And it's eventual. It doesn't happen right away. Like, he offers her to, like, to get in on what he has, and she says no at first, but then Rose is the tipping point, really. And the thing is that there, he presents it as, like, well, like, our interests align. Like, he wants Rose because he wants what Rose's assets. And then she's like, once I have Rose, Din can't have her, and then you can have Din. And then Kaew eventually concedes to this and says, under one condition will I help you and be the mole. It's if you don't harm Din, because I want Din at the end of this. But then Wasu, probably being the character that gives into his worst impulses the most, eventually hires a hitman to kill Din. It doesn't work, but Din is harmed by the bullet from the hitman. So that's Kaew's kind of breaking point. And when it comes to him, but then this kind of keeps going, and then eventually comes out that she sets up Din and all this kind of stuff, and in front of Din betrays Din. And even when Kaew is actively betraying her, Din consistently holds on to hope that Kaew will do the right thing. Like, Kaew will realize she made a mistake and then choose to do the right thing. And the first time, Kaew doesn't. Like, Kaew actively betrays Din. And it causes this irreversible damage to their relationship. And Din recognizes that. She's like, there is no coming back from this for us. There is a way to move forward, but our relationship will never be what it once was. We will never be sisters the way we were, kind of thing. But Kaew, similar to, like, Rose, although in a much more extreme form, does go on this journey to, like, recognize what she did, and then does do the right thing. And it's because of Kaew, like, because Wasu trusted her and she had inside information to what he was doing, and gave it to Lam, and did, like, anonymously, and is the reason that they get him in the end. It was because of her. Like, without her, they couldn't have done it. And then she does, like, over time of a period of many years, she does make amends and then apologizes to, like, Din and Rose. And they kind of, like, move on, and it's never the same. But they have closure, healthy communication and closure. And I like this redemption arc from the author because it feels earned. It feels human, is the other thing. Not that, like, things need to be earned, but, like, narratively speaking is what I mean. And it just feels like a very human thing. She just gave into her emotions, was blinded by the emotions. She became the bully she didn't want to be, like Din's father warned. And like, this is kind of like can happen to people. And I just like that it took her a long time, but she made the amends and like stayed away and like did all the things. And it was a good, well written redemption arc, not a out of nowhere, unbelievable redemption arc. It felt natural. All right. And with this like toxic love, betrayal kind of situation with Wasu and Kaew, I did notice something interesting when kind of looking at their storylines. And I think that the two of them are the masculine and feminine manifestation of feeling entitled to another person. And what I mean by that is like, let's kind of break down what they were doing. So Wasu, obviously the male figure in this situation, embodies the masculine concept of like male entitlement to other people. So he feels entitled to Rose due to, quote, tradition, which is AKA the family verbal deal. Because wife is property of husband, he doesn't want Rose the person, he wants her assets, her land, her money, her body. And when she refuses him, he tries to take Rose by force because violence is male power, right? And then contrast that to Kaew, okay, who goes on a similar journey, but she wants Din, right? So Kaew patiently waits 10 years for Din to, quote, see her. And all the time plays the role of Din's faithful assistant, like her work wife, okay? Emphasis on wife. And when Din chooses Rose, Kaew views it as Din rejecting her, not choosing Rose. Not just that she chose Rose, she rejected Kaew. And instead of accepting Din as a person with her own autonomy, Kaew tries to get rid of Rose through manipulation. And manipulation is feminine power. Because historically, in patriarchy, women don't have positions of power. They manipulate people in power because that's how they get power, because they can't be the figurehead by law. So Kaew then drives a wedge between Rose and Din by playing into Rose's jealousy and by using Wasu, the man in power, to get what she wanted, which was Rose out of the picture. So I think it's really interesting how they kind of ultimately want the same thing with the opposite person, Rose versus Din. And then the way they approach it is a masculine energy, feminine energy driven thing. So that was interesting in the way that was written. Not saying any of that was good, like good behavior, but it was an interesting comparison on how they went about that. All right, so in continuing with Rose and Din's story, so then Rose's Din gets separated for a second time. So after all the farm drama is done, when Wasu gets arrested, Deepakoran's coming out of the coma and getting better, Rose decides to be an adult and take control of big decisions. And so when her father's in the hospital, the doctors are like, yeah, he's recovering, but it's slower than we like. You should probably send him to Bangkok because you got money. There are better rehab centers there. And Rose is like, well, I need to talk to Din. And then Kaew's in the hospital and Din's with her because that's her friend. And Rose is like, I don't want to bother Din or like make the decision with Din. I'm going to make the decision myself because I'm a fucking adult. I can take charge. And she does. So she decides to go to Bangkok with her dad while he recovers. And so she doesn't tell Din, which is crazy. She's like, Mom, I'll tell her later or whatever. And then Mom tells Din because Mom's like an idiot. And then Din shows up. And I was like, Rose, what do you mean? You didn't tell me you were leaving, which was not adult-like, but here we are. But it was funny. It leads to the scene. So Rose and Din have this conversation and about this, and Din is understanding of it and immediately promises, I'll wait for you to come back. It's fine. Because you're going to come back. You're coming back to the farm. Rose explains that. And Rose insists, like, listen, we need to take this time that we're going to be apart to reflect on the way we feel for real. Because Rose is a rational person, and in this conversation is like basically everything that just happened between us went from 0 to 100. It was way too fucking fast, okay? I said, hi, nice to see you again. Next thing I know, we're married. Like, it was crazy. There's guns. Like, this was crazy. And Rose is basically torn between all of this because she's like, I don't know if my feelings are like real or it was like situational because like there was like life and death stuff going on and I didn't want to lose you because of that, or it's because I love you. And like, we were fake married and had to pretend we were married. And she's like, I need to sort out what's real and what was like circumstantial. Cause like we just went through insane situations that would trauma bond any normal pair of people. So like, were we trauma bonded or do we really love each other? And that's what, and I like that Rose thinks about that and is like, if we're going to do this for real, I'm going to make sure it's real, like for both of us and not this like born of circumstance kind of thing. And I love that they're separated not for drama, they are separated to reflect on their feelings. Like, characters aren't always given time to process things in stories because time, or, time is usually the big one. But this is such an important part of human growth. And so I like that the author was like, no, they need to really like think about this and come to their own conclusions and also get to know each other. So like Din comes and sees Rose basically once a week. It's insane how Rose Din something happens with the dad wakes up and he's like, or he gets better and he's like, Din, I need to talk to you about something. And Din drives from wherever the hell she is to it takes her hours. She's like, I'm here. What happened? He's like, what? She like drove straight to Bangkok and then starts doing that on a weekly basis to see Rose because Din is like the ultimate devoted partner. And then they like date for real again and like get to like know each other and like talk and like form an actual relationship, which is cute. And then it ultimately ends with Din and Rose's second marriage. And so, when Rose comes back to the farm. And so Din's second proposal was like one of the sweetest things ever. She basically like creates a path of flower petals and Rose sees them and recognizes them. She's like, oh, when we were kids, Din used to like take my teddy bear, we'd play hide and seek, and she would hide the teddy bear and then like lead Rose to the teddy bear with like flower petal trails. And so she does a flower petal trail and Rose is like, I'm expecting to see my teddy bear at the end of this trail, but it's just Din standing there. And Din's like, do you know what this place is? And Rose is like, this is where we first met. And so she brings her to where they first met. And then Din explains like, our love is not this two-month ordeal. All of that shit happened in 2 months. And I didn't have a timeline until Din says this at the end. And I was like, what the fuck? That was 2 months? That was an insane 2 months, okay? 2 months, okay? Poor Rose. And she's like, our love is not 2 months in the making. This has been a 20-year thing that's been going on between the two of us, just so you know. And then Din proposes with like, she presents Rose her teddy bear, and the teddy bear is wearing a wedding dress and has like the ring on a necklace. And it's just like the fucking cutest, most thoughtful thing. And it just shows how much Din was pining for decades. But it's so cute and personal and sweet the way she does it. And it honestly worked out because their second wedding, they basically just had their family there. And like, found family and blood relatives. And so Rose was very happy. She's like, I'm happy my dad, who really loves me, could actually be at my wedding. Cause like if we had just gone with a fake wedding, he wouldn't have been there. So it was better that they did it. And then one of my other favorite moments, Mom at the end tries to take credit for the wedding, for their getting married. She's like, yeah, I'm glad we're all here today because of me. And the cousins are like, really, bitch? You're the one trying to take credit for them getting married? You're insane. I mean, she's not wrong in a way. she did instigate. They all did. Because sometimes it takes a village to get the lesbians together. And then the absolute iconic moment I cannot wait to see in the series is the flower toss. This was so fucking funny. So basically, somebody goes up to Rose and they're like, Rose, you gotta toss the flowers. Modang's right in the front waiting for you. She wants to get married. She has like a guy she's interested in at this point who she marries later. But anyway, so Modang's up in front. And then it starts with Modang yelling, hey, Lam, why did you knock that out of my hands? I almost caught it. And then, so Lam comes in, knocks the flowers away from Modang's outstretched hands, and like redirects the flowers into Nam's lap, because Nam's just sitting there talking about business, not fucking paying attention to anything in life, because that's her. And then Din, she doesn't pay attention until Din's like, congratulations in advance. And it's so fucking funny because all of that was clear. So like, is Lam the matchmaker of the family? Like she is. But I just thought it was really a clever way for the author to be like, she's next. Her novel's next. Get ready for the water because this is going to be a fucking hot mess because she's the next one that's going to get married. So I thought it was cute marketing from the author to be like, next time up on the 4 Elements. It was just great and super chaotic and fucking hilarious. I don't know where Fi was in that, so I'm really curious to see in the series. But I imagine Fi was hiding behind a tree because she doesn't want anything with love. Now Llama's kind of like, no, Llama's there. It's like, yeah, maybe I'll participate. And then she's like, nah, gonna give it to Nam. Decided to be an asshole instead. She's like, I'm the reason they're here. I could be the reason she's next. Poor Modang's like, I don't want to be next. Like nobody on that flower toss was on the same page, and I just think it's hilarious. All right, and then just to wrap up the story. So last thing is just a quick overview of the special chapters, because I don't know how much the series will get into this, but there's some cute stuff that happens in there. So after the story ends, basically Din and Rose merge the farms together and learn how to manage it together. So basically, Din is still like the head manager of everything, and then Rose learns to become Din's assistant and like manage the farm with her. And so they spend a lot of like long hours like learning, and like Rose learns how to do whatever Kaew is doing essentially like as the assistant. And it takes her a while, and Din is super patient about it. And Rose also learns that Din is not opposed to having sex in the office. So that was actually a pretty funny scene. Rose is like, "This is your place of work," Din. Din's like, "It's our place of work," and it's like she's ridiculous. Rose and Din then eventually start discussing whether or not they want kids, which was cute. And they basically come to this mutual decision together that, like, yes, they do want to have a kid at some point, but it's when they're ready. Like, they don't need to. And then Din's like, we don't need to be pressured into this. Like, we can take our time, and when we're ready, we'll do it. And the most impatient person who wants Din and Rose to have a baby is Fi, who's constantly annoying them about it. And at one part, Din says to Rose, this is my other favorite Din line. Din's like, as for Fi, if she keeps bugging us about having a baby, you can just tell her to have one of her own. Like, she yells it because she's pissed off and so annoyed with her cousin. But like the person who's like, ill love is like, can you guys have a baby already? Like every 5 minutes. And Jin's like, can you tell her to have her own fucking baby? Just leave us alone. Okay, but then 5 years later, 5 years into their marriage, the first niece, the next generation, is born. And so Din and Rose have a girl, and her name is Daisy. And it was like a co-parenting situation where Rose gave birth, but Din was the egg donor, so it's kind of like their baby. And at this stage, Modang is married and has a daughter, Mudnoy, who becomes friends with Daisy. And it's really cute. So it's like, again, the cycle keeps continuing. And the niece is very, very spoiled by the cousins, particularly Fi. Like, Fi is like, I need to be her number one. Like, she's just obsessed with Rose. This is just a manifestation that's continuing, which is so cute and sweet and just, I love it. I love the story. I really loved Rose and Din. They were such a romantic couple. They had just, first of all, fake dating, fake marriages. Like, I am a sucker for that trope. It just leads to so many fun inner monologues of just like, what's real, what isn't. And Rose and Din had such just like an epic love story that spanned decades. And I liked the way it really unfolded, the way they realized it, unrealized things. They really worked together and became equals in the end. And I really enjoyed their story. And just like I mentioned, I didn't expect this story. I expected it to be like sweeping and romantic because like they kind of have those tropes going on. I didn't expect it to be as violent and funny as it was. And so I was very surprised about how balanced this story was in terms of romance, action, and like comedy. It had everything. And I'm really, really digging this author. Like I said, this was my first novel by Salmon, and she just is great at characterizing. And so I'm very excited to finish the 4 elements and potentially read other things that she's written because I really like this story a lot. I thought it was great. And so to really quickly wrap this up, first I'll start with the Big Gay Energy Award. So this is an element of the story that I thought exemplified big gay energy. And so this is a scene I didn't talk about, but wins my award. So after their second wedding, when they finally are having their honeymoon evening or alone or whatever, Din is immediately thirsty the minute they get behind a closed door, okay? And like starts furiously making out with Rose like up against a wall. And then Rose is suddenly like, where has this Din been? This is a whole different part of who did I just marry? Because like, what are you doing? You've never been this like aggressive ever. And she teases Din about it because like Rose is anyway. She teases Din about it. And then Din says, basically, I've been so patient this whole fucking time. Like, and so I love that Din gets really impatient the second time they get married. And is like, can we just have sex now? It's just really funny. And Din gets all suave and like smooth talking weirdly in the scene, and it's very big gay energy from Din, who has just been an awkward disaster for like 300 pages. So that gets it for me. My Taylor Swift song that I think perfectly encapsulates the Earth, the story, is Love Story. Because love story. It's a childhood friends to lovers kind of story that has like drama in it that doesn't 100% line up, but there are elements that line up about this. So we were both young when I first saw you. So there's the childhood Din and Rose thing. And then the Marry Me Juliet, You'll Never Have to Be Alone. That's Din welcoming Rose into the family. And I talked to your dad, go pick out a white dress. This is Din asking, doing the chivalrous boyfriend thing, asking Tipa Corin to permission to marry Rose. So I thought that song really encapsulated it. And I think that's all I got for you for the Earth. It was a lot, but it's a phenomenal story. I really, really loved it. I'm very excited to continue reading the Four Elements. I will be reading The Water, Closer to the Water, actually airing. So it's going to be a while. In between now and then, I will be doing a book club on Harmony Secret because Caitlin and I are going to be doing a discussion about it and about the series. And then I'll talk about the book because honestly, I loved that book. It complements the series. It doesn't follow it as closely as like the Four Elements series and novel, but there's like pros and, there's like not pros and cons, but there's like differences and similarities that I'll talk about, like what I liked and didn't like, mostly liked when it came to the novel. So that'll be up for book club next if you guys like the book club. If you made it this far, thank you very much for joining me on this story. Let me know what you thought about the novel. You can compare it to the show. Maybe if you've already seen the entire series, let me know if there's anything I missed because like I did this early. So if there's anything that happens in episode 8 and 7 that you want to talk about. If you have any suggestions for book clubs, please let me know because I really enjoy doing them. And so hopefully we can talk about more of them. So thank you for coming along the journey. And until next time, hydrate for lesbian Jesus and gay it up all over the place. Bye. And with that, we've been Big Gay Energy. If you like this episode, check out all our other episodes right here on YouTube.
Please like, leave a comment below, and subscribe for more amazing super gay content.